When you look back and sort through the logs of online history, you'll only hear stuff about big YouTubers, and that's for an obvious reason. The YouTubers you hear about made a name for themselves, created their own success story, and perhaps set up their own future failures. But what you won't hear about is the sea of YouTubers who were just clones, copies, and failed attempts. But just because nobody cares about them, doesn't mean there isn't a story to share.
If anyone has ever heard of the name Ramains, it's usually a fleeting reference to a tiny creator that was rightfully forgotten by everyone, yet behind this 500 subscriber channel lies a much richer tapestry of lore, with intertwining friendships and conflicts, a neglected and obsessive history, and of course, it wouldn't be an online story without a predictably degenerate ending. And with his ousting from his community, his linking mutual groups of aspiring small commentary channels collapsed like dominoes, causing complete chaos.
And today, myself and Spinling are going to tell you all about it. This is All That Remains, from our look inside the commentary catacombs. Parts of Ramains' life before the internet are rare to find, but considering the size of his career, it's actually surprising how much we do know. We're aware that Ramains' real name is Lucas, he was born in Canada in around 2003, he was a brony for most of his online presence, and much like many other people online, his most popular alias was not his first. Before Lucas went under the name Ramains and joined the commentary community, he was originally under the name of Lukash 2012, Lucas Productions, or L Productions from 2015 to 2019, as he would be more inside the online music community as a producer and a rapper at 13 years old. However, don't get your hopes up, Lucas wasn't toting guns in Harlem because he was more interested in rap because of the epic Rap Battles of History series, and he would subsequently join the fan community. Sadly, there's not much around this time that's been archived apart from a Newgrounds page, meaning we don't get to add yet another musical masterpiece to the collection. But what we do know about Lucas is that he was, and still is, completely blacklisted and banned from the epic Rap Battles community, and as you're about to find out, that was for a pretty good reason. You may have heard of someone by the name of Mr. J or JMB Raps, who was once just a young teen making parodies of the original Epic Rap Battles channel with his friend Nathan in 2012. And although his videos were low quality in production, the somewhat competent lyricism and ambition earned the channel some success. It would go on to land Mr. J some incredibly successful work as a voice actor and a rapper for videos that have garnered millions of views. But back in 2016, it's fair to say that he was a pretty recognized and somewhat respected figure inside the Epic Rap Battles community. So it became very concerning when Mr. J, who was still a pretty young guy at this time, gained an anonymous stalker. Accounts on Twitter would begin impersonating him, harassing and stalking his family, and that stalker was the man we know today as Ramains, or Lucas. Though it's hard to find a lot of information, here's the story from what we can piece together. Back in 2016, Ramains was making his own epic rap battles, and he was a huge fan of Mr. J or JMB Raps as he was known back then. We can see this from his old Newgrounds account. Hey guys, Lucas here, and I just released a new video, so go check that out. So I got something to say. My friend JMB Raps' birthday is in 18 weeks, so happy birthday JMB Raps. And I got Splooge Gaming? And I got Splooge Gaming, Nick the Singing Wolf, and Lyrical Gamer. So check those awesome people out on YouTube. They expect to work with me on this now. I will do another rap battle if you all want to, and I will see you next time. Bye! However, after Mr. J got into some very public and complex drama with his friends, Lucas would turn on him, and dedicated the next 2 years to harassing him and his family by using the Twitter account JMBRap69 to impersonate him. This went on for a while until he was confronted and he promised to stop, but things would flare up again a year later, in the only incident we have concrete evidence for. Out of the blue, in June 2019, the JMBRap69 account came alive again, posting this. Hello, this is Justin's father, and Justin has committed and me and my wife are completely sad and shocked that our son would do this. Someone would DM the real Mr. J to let him know, and he said this. Surprised people still do this shit. I haven't kept up with anything for a while now, but thanks for the heads up I suppose. That account's been a thing for years now. I'd like to point out that this person is posting stuff from my personal Facebook. That's not unsettling at all. A bunch of us have reported him, so hopefully the account will get taken down. When the account came alive again in 2019, Lucas, under the name L Productions, was confronted, and he would respond by saying that he had left Twitter ages ago and given his old impersonation account to a former friend by the name of Mike Demon. Some would try to contact this elusive Mike Demon, resulting in getting DMs like this. So you made the Justin Sock account? Yes, can you please f off? Like, holy kid. What was the point of that? None of your business, that's the point. No, it is. You pretended that Justin committed suicide. What did you gain from that? Exposure? Lol. I wanted to see if people can see that fat die, but the truth would be revealed soon after, when Lucas admitted that he was actually Mike Demon. The real reason why I did all of this is because I wanted to come back in the community, and this may be confusing, but when I was running the JMB Twitter, I felt disgusted and saddened, so I posted the tweet, and I had this guilt over my head forever. I don't want to be forgiven, I don't want to hear the words it's okay. In reality, it isn't. I know I'm going to be talked, I know I'm going to be memed, clowned, whatever you want to do. I don't care. I just want to let this thing out of my head for good. If you want to announce I'm Mike Demon, go on right ahead. I'll take my official leave and never come back. I just want to put aside this thought and never come back to it. Following this, Lucas would be collectively ousted and blacklisted from the Epic Rap Battles community for his repeated behaviour. And although it's not much, this short window of information into Lucas's past before relevance is really interesting. Though most 13-year-olds aren't all stalkers, it's not impossible. I've seen 13-year-olds do worse than this. But to see Lucas still so connected to someone he barely knew for so long, it paints a picture of this kind of obsessive, manipulative, psychotic kid just plugged into the internet, and as you'll see, this would become a bit of a pattern.
With no community to call home, Lucas would begin searching for a new one, and created his YouTube channel on the 28th of June, 2019. 2 months later, he would make a new Twitter account to post on. Sadly, this is the part of Lucas's online presence that we know the least about, as we have barely any idea what he was doing on this YouTube channel and Twitter account from the middle of 2019 to the middle of 2020. What we do know is that Lucas would enter the commentary community in around mid to late 2020, as seen from a few archived tweets. And at this time, Lucas had abandoned the Lou Cash name and instead opted for a far simpler Phantom, a name where he would gain his footing into the commentary community by offering cheap thumbnail commissions on Twitter. This would get him into contact with a number of other small YouTubers, and in late 2020, he would become well acquainted with the members of an upcoming commentary YouTuber and friend group under the name Purgatory. The existence of Purgatory is incredibly important to understand Lucas and his career because it was where most of the people in the community knew him from. And for this video, we interviewed two members of Purgatory who were some of the closest people to Lucas whilst they still were friends. These two individuals are Plate Zero, who by all accounts was his best friend, and Dead Meme Frog, who was another close friend and later collaborator with him. So when did you first meet Ramains?
I first met Ramains because he was doing thumbnail commissions, and I decided to DM him because I was working on a video, Sonic Generations video. It's still on my channel. I just DM'd him. We had a good conversation. He made my thumbnail. It was but oh well. He made the thumbnail. Then I think he was invited to the public Purgatory server when that was a thing, or I was invited to his server, and then he was working on the Tarhead video, and we had a good talk about that. And then slowly we started to become friends, and we usually like get on calls for like hours. We could hang out like one-to-one for hours, and we plan to do like more videos together. But
would you say that he was you're at the time like one of your best friends?
Yeah, because we always like do calls for several hours, and he'd be the main guy like I go to if I ever have like a script done, or if I need an opinion on something. I go to him for most of it.
I met him in I want to say either mid or late 2020, just based off like the servers and friend groups I was in. Like there were like a few small commentary servers and stuff I was in at the time, and I met him and a couple of other friends through those servers. And I was just, just like meeting a lot of cool people at the time. It was, like during COVID and stuff, a lot of people were locked up. So it just brought like a lot of like sense of like community at the time. So that's how I met him. And we became pretty close friends after that. We started like collabing on videos, doing stuff like that. I think a most popular video at the time was on Call Me Carson, which had him featured on it, which, sucks now. That's the reason like I unlisted that video, and it's because it has him featured.
Late 2020 is also around the time that he would have the most successful videos on YouTube, as he was making videos on retrospectives typically on old commentary YouTubers, under his name Phantom. He would discuss the likes of Solid Shy, Zaptai, and Tarhead. In particular, Lucas's video on Tarhead would manage to gain almost 17,000 views, but I wouldn't let the interaction fool you, because the quality of these videos speak for themselves.
Cosmodor was one of my favorite YouTubers. Well, not really up there, but definitely one of my favorite YouTubers. I thought he was pretty good. I liked his taste. His taste in animation was pretty good. I really liked it. Soul Jibe or Thomas was a content creator on the site, producing montage parodies, doing gameplays, doing whatever. Before that, he was known as Catchers HD and was making MLG videos till his school and friends found out. Then proceeded to move on to Soul Jibe, and I won't lie, that's pretty good content.
But he caused his own downfall, and he killed his own career by grooming a minor. Tar had everything in his hands until it all slipped away. I don't want to see any minors or anyone getting hurt on this site. Nobody deserves to be groomed. You have been groomed. Please speak out. Your voice matters.
At this point in the timeline, we're now approaching early 2021, and it's here where I think it was worth taking a few steps back to understand the following progression. Because one question you may be asking yourself is how Lucas exactly went from epic rap battles to the commentary community. And although we're not 100% sure, there is a very likely connection that pieces these two eras together. During his existence in the epic rap battles community, and even after it, Lucas would proudly display what shows he liked and what fandoms he was a part of, and one of them was JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Now, this screenshot was from 2019, and around that time, Pyrocynical would post a Fortnite gaming video with an intro paying homage to JoJo, and through him, Lucas would start watching commentary videos. But still, this seems like a bit of a far reach, and why exactly this gaming video with JoJo intro? Well, the video is most likely because of the intro was edited and later separately posted by Pyrocynical's editor, Ramska, and just like that with Mr. J, Lucas would gain a growing obsession with Ramska. In early 2021, Lucas would rename his channel from Phantom to Rams Flipful. Worth noting because Ramska's first channel name was iFlipsful. Then, another Purgatory member known as AMAC would suggest he changed it to something less clunky, like Ramains. You even stole his previous name, iFlipsful. I actually didn't know about that. I was just mashing words together. Then you told me to change it to Remains, which I thought sounded better. I'm sorry, but that's a huge coincidence. I guess. But the Ramska obsession doesn't end there. Lucas had already begun changing his character over the months, even as Phantom, to one that was very similar to Ramska's. Furthermore, the creepiest part of this is around the time Lucas would stop referring to his real life name as Lucas, and instead took the name Matthew, which is literally Ramska's name. I mean, is it just me, or is this some skinwalker? Regardless of the weird parasitic obsession that Ramains had gotten, he would continue on by trying to rebuild his channel and make a name for himself in the community. Now, when you change your name as a content creator, it can be very difficult for people who are watching to stick by, and people who may have heard of you back then are less likely to recognize you now. But with his constant interaction in the community, like making 5,000 tweets from March to September 2021, other creators in the commentary community began to hear of his name. Not only that, but this is when he started really associating himself with Purgatory, doing a number of videos with them, from his collaboration with Dead Meme Frog on a Call Me Carson video in March, to doing a special ed podcast with AMAC and Play, as well as the Body Type podcast with Play and Nifty, and appearing on live streams with Solar. But despite all these collaborations, Ramains' interest in online drama was seemingly decreasing over the months, and again, he would make another move that would be pretty insane to anyone else aspiring to be a famous YouTuber. Ramains would start rebranding his channel and deleting all of his commentary videos. The following month, he would post a video on Pokemon Black, and it was very clear what direction he was taking his channel in. But why he did is so more up in the air. On one hand, it's possible he just wanted to actively leave the commentary scene and make more of a name for himself based on what he was interested in. But on the other hand, his video on Pokemon Black was more like what Ramska covered. And so was Ramains tearing down what he had built just to feed his Ramska obsession? Either way, despite his intention to leave, Ramains would continue to be dragged back into small commentary drama when one of Ramains' closest friends, a commentary channel called Vex Says Stuff, was exposed for being a predator and a groomer. Specifically, they were caught having sexual conversations and erotic roleplay with multiple minors, the youngest being 14. Vex was 18. Ramains would be one of the first people to confront Vex on what they had done, as shown in these DMs here. Why didn't you do this with your girlfriend though? I'm just really disappointed. You're one of my closest friends and it hurts me to hear you did this. I just don't know, Vex. I really don't know. My girlfriend has like sexual relapse and she gets grossed out by that stuff lately, and when I talk to people sometimes I get H word and my mind gets foggy. I never meant to be like this and I feel so gross and horrible. I was really considering ending my life because of it too. You basically cheated on her though by having sexual convos with a 15-year-old. You didn't say your age while doing it and you knew she was 15. I get that you're depressed and horny, but you shouldn't have done this, Vex. Don't end your life, but get help, please. Well, I didn't groom her, I promised I would be honest. I get hypersexual and I get attached to people easily. Vex, this is very serious, and I get lonely and my mind gets all foggy and stuff. And I said that I felt really gross about the things that were said, but I was so scared to tell her because I didn't want to get into trouble and freak out. Yeah, I know. Ram? Do you think Vex is a horrible human? Vex, what you did was horrible. I believe you can change, but Vex, what the Frowny face. Excuse me? Don't frowny face me. I have no words. I don't know what to say or do, but just know that I do regret everything a lot. In the core DMs, you said you were going to be upfront and honest. I want you to do that. I am gonna be. Vex needs a bit of time to think. When you release a public statement, unpriv your Twitter. By the time the Vex situation had largely ended in early September of 2021, Ramains was still in and around the commentary community, managing to make connections. He had reached around 600 subscribers on YouTube and 500 followers on Twitter, and it seemed like, for once, he was actually getting somewhere and knew what he wanted to do. But there was something about Ramains that wasn't right. Even for those who didn't know his stalker history, this barely notable 500 subscriber YouTuber fell off. Something was there. He was perhaps a little too quiet and blending into the background too well. This feeling may have something to do with a mostly overlooked controversy that occurred in late January 2021. During this time, he started professing his love and even stalking profiles of a couple of girls inside the community, with most of the age gaps being 2 years. Almost all of the screenshots proving this were lost to time, with the only archive being from Cindy Pop, an artist and another member of the Purgatory gang. But what separates her apart is that she was 14, while Lucas was 17, professing his crush on her. Hey Sin, I just wanted to tell you something that's been on my mind, lol, but I'd rather keep this short, but recently I started to like you. It's a little embarrassing, but I'd rather say this instead of keeping this a secret, especially it's kind of weird of a 17-year-old to ask out a 14-year-old, Lamau. But I just wanted to say this. The reason why I started to like you is because you are a wonderful person, and a really sweet person. I just overall like your personality. Just getting this over with, Lamau. I don't mind if you say yes or no, lol. Just trying to get these feelings out. Hope you have a good day. The more I keep reading these, the more I realise how weird he was. A day later, on the 24th of January 2021, Ramains would post a twitlonger admitting to what he had done. Ramains would purposely avoid naming Cindy Pop in the twitlonger, and when she publicly came out to reveal she was one of the girls, Ramains claimed that she was lying about being stalked by her. Hey, so I know you want nothing to do for me, but I'm asking as a favour. So remember when I said that I'd stalked your social media and posted that twitlonger so I could take accountability? Sin lied and said that that was her, and I was wondering if you could say it was you and not her. All I'm asking you is to post that. I'm being gaslighted right now and I just want it to stop. Though Ramains' behaviour was incredibly weird and some of you may find it enough to condemn him, many of his friends continued to stick by him. That's not to say they let him off the hook. He was repeatedly warned and reprimanded by them, but as of now, he didn't deserve the harsh treatment that was often placed upon paedophiles. Ramains was weird for what he had done, but he hadn't done anything sexual or even be in a relationship in this situation. There's also the fact that he came out apologising and admitting that he was wrong for what he did, accepting any losses and taking accountability. It's very tough to even call this a grooming situation in any way, considering that Cindy Pop herself had accepted his apology, and for his friends, those factors would convince them to stick with him, despite some hesitation. And after all, the man himself had covered numerous pedophiles in the past.
So at that time, I didn't really think about it. I was like, this guy has made multiple videos about like exposing pedophiles, or not exposing pedophiles, but talking about, previous pedophiles in different communities. He knows to not do this again, and I trusted him, thinking like, okay, he's not going to do anything like too out there.
Despite what he had done, Ramains had managed to regain the good graces of his friends, and this incident would be largely forgotten. His reputation was one of the cleanest in the community he was in, and most people hoped for this incident to be a breeze in the wind, a distant footnote for a YouTuber on his way to the top. But instead, it became a prelude to something much darker.
Whilst Ramains seemed to be a perfectly normal person in public, behind the scenes he was anything but. During the summer of 2021, he'd befriended a Twitter user in the commentary community known as Ramsey, or Grayson, and over the weeks, Ramains would begin to develop an online and sexual relationship with him. Again, let me remind you that at this time, Ramains was 18. Grayson was only 13 years old at this time. The two mainly communicated over Snapchat, though no archives of their direct conversations exist. What does exist, however, is the number of snaps that Ramains sent to Grayson, and they are pretty disgusting. Just a precaution though, most of these archives are really blurry, so some of this might not be accurate. It's unclear when exactly this relationship began, but we know that it ended on the 20th of September 2021. Because Grayson would eventually let one of their closest friends know about what Ramains was doing. That friend was someone called Skits, another small commentary YouTuber who was friends with a lot of people in the community, including Ramains, and when Skits confronted Ramains in DMs, it was clear what was going on. I don't know, it's an addiction and I don't know how to quit. I literally don't know. I want to change, I want to be a better person, I want to not do this anymore, but I have an addiction and I need to stop, and I know that, but I don't know how to. Matt, I feel really sick, dude. I know you're struggling with this right now, but like you wanna have with him. Dude, you said it yourself. I know I did. I don't know anymore. I was horny. I couldn't stop myself. I don't know how to stop. What do you think you should do? You know it's wrong, you've told Grayson that it's wrong, and you keep doing. I should just block him, but if I do that, he'll expose me, and that's my fear. Are you more concerned about yourself than basically sexting with a 13-year-old and how that's affected him? He's basically dependent on the two of us, and you're using him to make you I of course don't want you to be exposed because your mental health and physical safety is really important to me, but dude, you've been doing this for months. You're grooming Grayson. I don't feel bad for Grayson, but I told him multiple times if he tells me to stop or feels uncomfortable, I would stop. But not once did he tell me, but I do understand his and you can tell I am changing as a person. And I care about YouTube and the community because this is the closest things I had to friends. I care and love everyone to death. I'm sorry to Grayson, I really am. I don't want to groom him. Maybe I should just leave. You should get him to delete everything and then tell him you need to listen to your therapist for a while. Matt, I know you feel bad, but I need you to understand how serious what you're doing is. You're grooming him and getting him to send you pictures of his chest and thighs so you can to him. It is up. He won't listen, I know that. Matt, I don't know if we should be friends if this keeps happening. You mean so much to me, but if it continues, I'd rather protect Grayson than let this happen again. I'm really hoping it doesn't come to that. I feel really gross. I just want to stop. I really do. I try everything in my power to stop, but I don't know how to. He does it on purpose. He shows me his thighs every day. Dude, that's just you blaming him and also admitting you like it. Matt, you're 18, he's 5 years younger than you, and probably does it just because he knows you like it. I know you want to stop, but you're blaming him for just sending you his thighs when you're the one who chooses to it. I know. I don't know anymore, I don't know what to do to stop. I realize that I need to change, but making the change is the hard part. You have to tell your therapist what you did again. Matt, answer everything honestly, okay? Did you ever send Grayson anything or get anything from him? I never sent any explicit images, and I never saved the photos. What did he send you? When was the last time he sent you stuff, other than thighs? Just his chest, but nothing revealing showed, like cleavage or boobs. Did you ask him to be naked ever for nudes? No. Matt, dude, I don't know what to do here. I feel awful just keeping this private, but I know I can't say it. It would be horrible and I can't watch you suffer. I can't. I don't know what to do other than ask you stuff. When did you and him even start getting sexual, man? I don't remember, and I plan on leaving anyways. I'm deleting everything tomorrow. Don't delete, just archive just in case. How often did you do things with him? Not every single days, it was just every couple of days. How did it start each day? Matt, like when the Vex stuff happened, how did that not make you stop? If you don't stop, you'll be her. I'll stop. Thank you. I don't know how to deal with this. I don't know what to do right now. Matt, you have to get help. Serious help. The only reason I haven't said stuff about this is because you're the closest person I have to me online. If you don't get help and keep using Grayson, I'll have to do something and I don't want to be in that situation, okay? I really don't, okay? What do you mean by I'll have to do something? If you don't stop it, I'm gonna have to make Grayson stop talking to you somehow. Or worse, if I find out something much worse happened. I don't want to do that. I seriously care about you so much, I don't want to do something that would hurt you or your hobbies or enjoyments. I'll block Grayson, so then I don't get attracted anymore. As seen in these DMs, Skits did not want to expose Ramains for what he had done because he was their friend, meaning this stayed under wraps for almost a week. It would only be revealed when Grayson mentioned it in passing to another small commentator by the name of Paradise. And despite Paradise having his own rivalry beef with Skits, he would decide to look into this and contacted Skits, eventually feeling obligated to publish these DMs. In the early hours of September 28th, 2021, Paradise would post a tweet with a link to a Google document containing the evidence against Ramains and his confession to Skits. The tweet would quickly gain traction and reactions of disgust from many of Ramains' mutuals. As for those who were holding on to hope that this wasn't real, their explanations would be dashed when Ramains would tweet out his first Twitlinger response a couple of hours later. This is something I didn't want to talk about, but as someone who's taking therapy because of this, I should probably talk about this. I'm not going to lie or hide anything under the rug, so this Twitlinger is going to be the truth, and people won't like it, which I completely understand. I had sexual conversations with Grayson, that is something I won't lie about. I was in the wrong place at the time, and required love from anyone, and wanted that satisfaction of love, and it was up that I asked a 13-year-old for it. I did this with him multiple times because I wanted to feel loved and felt like I was loved. Obviously that was the wrong thing to do and I take full responsibility. I'm even mad at myself that I did that. I tried to stop multiple times, like leaving him on red, but I kept coming back because I didn't want to seem like I was ignoring someone because I really hate ignoring people unless I find them annoying. I f***ed up really badly and I'm not trying to gain sympathy or trying to make me seem like the good guy because I'm not. I'm the bad guy, as cringy as that sounds. Before the document I was taking therapy, I still am, and bettering myself so I don't do this with anyone ever again. I do feel regret and I will apologise to one person only, and that person is Grayson. I am sorry I did this. I should have stopped a long time ago, and I regret I did this. I'm sorry I ruined you, and obviously sorry doesn't cut it, but I actually am sorry. I really am. I will leave the internet and never come back. Thank you for everything, and I think that's the first right step in the direction. I'm an adult and I should act like one. Sorry Grayson, I really am. Ramains being exposed as a predator was the biggest expose the small commentary community had seen since Vex's stuff in the previous month, and despite his low numbers, it was the amount of connections and mutuals and friends in the community he had that made this blow up. I mean, you've seen throughout the video how many people call Ramains their best friend. This situation got so much attention to the point that people as big as Turkey Tom were noticing this, and as for Ramains' closest friends who saw this Twitlinger for the first time, it completely broke them. This involved people such as Dead Meme Frog, who would post a statement of his own after collecting his thoughts.
It can be hard to accept that someone close to you was a monster, or at least turning into one, and that's what's happening here. Ramains and I had been close friends for about a year. He was genuinely one of the nicest people I had ever met in the commentary community, but sometimes people aren't as they seem, and red flags started to slowly appear. Today, it came out that Ram was sexing a 13-year-old at 18. This isn't alleged either, since Ram admitted to everything. Not only is this morally but I'm almost certain this is illegal. I want to make clear that I had no prior knowledge of this recent incident and found out when everyone else did. I don't know why people do this sick and disgusting shit. It shouldn't be hard to just avoid talking to minors sexually on the internet, but this has become a pressing issue. It happened with Vex and it's happening again. I hope everyone affected by Ram is alright and aren't feeling bad about what happened. My sympathy goes towards them.
I was in my first class on a high school day in September of 2021. I saw the doc. It had like around like 100 likes or something like that. It shook me because I was because like at first, because it was like my friend, I was just like, all right, well, like this has to be false, right? I didn't want to make that conclusion without at least getting the other side or something. Like I didn't want to just like say that. So I replied to the tweet just saying that I was going to wait for a side of the story, but that this would suck if it's true. And then I sent that to group chat with like our general friend group that he was in. Like we were all like just talking about it for a bit. We were just like, yo, we need to talk to him about this later on. And then what happened is that I think like an hour or two after that, he admitted everything. He deactivated his Twitter. He left the group, and I think he eventually like deleted that Discord account entirely.
And one of the people who was the most affected was Plate Zero, who by all accounts was Ramains' best friend online.
The day, I can tell you like how my day went when I found out. I was at school in band class, and I was just chilling. I was looking at my phone, and I saw, I think either Frog's tweet or Paradise's tweet of the original allegations. And it was me just sitting there reading everything, trying to grasp everything, and then I put my phone away, and then this is the funny part. I was like trying not to cry, and then I raised my hand and I told my band instructor like, hey, can I go to the bathroom? He said no. I was like, okay, cool, I'll just stand here. All of my sorrow. It's like, oh well. But that day was really long because it was the longest. Cause I had a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday thing. Like you get different classes each day.
Yeah.
I think it was a Thursday or something, and it was the longest day of the week. So I had to go to biology class, and then I also had to do band practice at the end. So I didn't get home until like 7 or 8. So all that time, I just had to be like, oh, okay, my friend's a pedophile. It's like, okay, cool, whatever. That was just me trying to grasp everything. I didn't really grasp everything that day. It wasn't until like like a week later where it's like, okay, this sucks, and I broke down like crying.
On the 2nd of October, Ramains would delete his YouTube channel, which had already begun bleeding subs, and quickly vanished off social media. But he would not be truly gone. On the 6th of October, another commentary YouTuber by the name of Mr. Nobody, or Mando, who was another longtime friend of Ramains, revealed that he'd made a new Discord account and had added him on there. Mr. Nobody was confronted in private and said he would disassociate with Ramains, but this wouldn't be as truthful as it seems. But back to Ramains, why did he make this new Discord account telling basically no one? Well, it may have something to do with the fact that Ramains was dating yet another minor. This time it was a Twitter artist by the name of Eliax, who was 15 when she and Ramains began dating on the 16th of October. Ramains had wanted to date Eliax earlier in the year, but back then he was 17 and she was 14. But now when he's an adult, he had barely no issue with dating her. To be clear, a 15-18 relationship online is pretty weird, but it's not pedophilia or grooming on its own. But what's different with Ramains is that this is only days after he was dating a 13-year-old, and this was a girl he previously wanted to date when she was younger. Eliax and Ramains' relationship was meant to only stay within the knowledge of Ramains' closest friends, but it quickly became public only a day after it begun. On the 17th of October, Mr. Nobody, clearly having not cut off Ramains, had this conversation with him. "Hello, I just got word that you're dating someone." "Yeah, who are they, if I may ask?" "Well, it's public, so..." Yeah, I saw the community's going crazy. But why a 15-year-old though? You are 18 and that can lead you to jail in the worst case. It's legal in Canada. We haven't been NSFW at all. Despite that, shit's weird and illegal. The age of consent in Canada is 19, isn't it? No, Lamau, it's 16. It's only illegal if me and her have a sexual relationship. On the 18th of October, a private group chat composed mostly of Purgatory members would come together to gather as much information on Ramains as they could, in order to report him to the authorities. Over the next few days, they found out the area he was living in and had managed to get his IP address, but not much past that. With the limited information they had, they would report him to the police. On the 19th of October, Mr. Nobody would finally cut off contact with Ramains after he learned that Purgatory had Ramains' IP. He was reprimanded by others on why he had previously lied, and would publish a document the same day apologizing. Inside, he would also reveal that Ramains was still in contact with the aforementioned Vex's stuff, another groomer. After cutting him off, Mr. Nobody would give Ramains' new Discord to Plate Zero, who conducted a 30-minute interview confronting Ramains on the allegations and their friendship.
Just want to get a few shit off my chest, because obviously what you did really just f***ed me up. Even like right now, it's f***ing me up. Like just me talking to you, I'm literally shaking right now.
I'm also shaking. Keep in mind, I have not been in a voice chat in so long. So
yeah,
this is like my first voice chat in a long time.
Yeah. So
and you could probably hear my voice shaking right now. So.
Yeah, I'm shaking as well. But my first question is: Do you consider yourself to be a pedophile because of all of this?
That is a hard thought for me, because there are times. Well, right now I'm just confused because I'm getting told that I made a mistake and I f***ed up bad, but I'm learning from it because I'm getting therapy and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time I do consider myself, and I don't want to feel like that. I want to get the help I need and just be a better person overall.
I just want to know why did you do it in the first place? Like, you made these like videos. I even started in like the John Bob video and all that. So like, even though you knew it was wrong, why did you do this?
I think because if you know how like lonely I get, and you know how like I talk about all the time that I'm like really lonely and single, and I just wanted to feel loved, and Grayson was, I think, someone who I thought was the one, as much as f***ed up as that sounds. And as soon as I started realizing what the f*** am I doing? This is a 13-year-old. I'm 18. I realized what I did, and I stopped altogether, and I decided to go get therapy.
You felt lonely. That's your reasoning.
I'm kind of, because like I just wanted to be loved, and I'm not really. I don't really go into much relationships, as every time I ask someone out, I get either friend zone or rejected, and it's just hard.
I still don't understand. You're dating Eliax, who's 15. I know that's legal in your state, but like, don't you think that's like weird and slightly concerning at all?
I think it's weird. Like, don't get me wrong.
Then why are you doing it?
I don't know.
You don't know?
It's just
Phantom.
what?
That's you don't know why you think it's weird. It's you already have a bad relationship with minors in general, and you're dating a 15-year-old. Like, I know nothing like sexual has happened, but like that's a warning sign, Phantom. I mean, you're pretty much past the warning sign. You are legit.
Yeah, I'm in the red flag zone at this point. But yeah, I wasn't actually supposed to. Like, I'll tell you why. Because I was in contact with her because she was in contact with Haley, and so I met through her, and we were talking, and for some reason she called me baby, which I was confused. But the more she said it, I was like, you know what, we might as well just date. And I know that's confusing.
Are you gonna end it?
And what?
The relationship?
The call? No.
No, the
Oh, I thought you meant the. I thought you meant the call.
No, the relationship.
I'll think about it.
You'll think about it.
I'll think about it. Actually, I will.
Okay.
Because when I say I think about it, I actually do think about it for long periods of time, and then I make my decision.
Okay. So, just to let you know, like, how much this is up, and like the fact that I'm even shaking, like just talking to you, should let you know that, like, I want my friend back. That's the thing. But like, I know I'm never gonna have him back, because you're not the friend I knew.
I know. I'm not the same. I know. You don't need to say that.
I do hope you get the help you need. I do hope that you stop this shit. But I a part of me, like I said this before, a part of me wants to be friends with you, but I just can't.
I get that.
I just can't. And I do firmly believe that you are a pedophile. And I want literally nothing to do with you. This is legit just a one-time thing. I'm never gonna talk to you after this.
Alright, that's fair.
Okay.
Immediately after his call with Plate Zero, Ramains will jump into a call with an individual who will call Commentator A for the purpose of privacy. For context, Commentator A was a former friend of Ramains who had pretended to be his friend and tricked him into thinking he was working on a video exonerating Ramains, but in reality he was secretly recording it. And within 30 seconds of hopping into the call, you can hear how much of a snide, arrogant, shameless, two-faced prick that Ramains is.
What's up? I was in a voice chat with Plate.
Who, Plate Zero?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was, I haven't really talked to him in a long time.
He was like interviewing me or some shit.
Interviewing about what? Like, oh, you want a job? Why do you want this job, sir?
Yeah, I was I was interviewed, asked questions about it, and I asked, "Are you recording?" And he was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Oh my."
Recording for what?
I asked him, "Is this gonna be a video?" And he was like, "No." And I'm in my head, I'm just like, "Yeah, he's a f***ing liar."
I don't know, man. I just think it's f***ed up when people fake screenshots.
It's so f***ed. Like, I'm legit like saying, "What the f***?" They're literally faking screenshots, and I saw the screen recording. So apparently making a Twillonger. This is just like the Slazo situation. Holy fuck.
Yeah, you're basically furry Slazo.
So
Apparently, like, Plate voice chat me, and he was like, "Dude, you do the break up with Eliax," and I was like, "Why?" "Because she's 15, and you have a history with minors."
That's what he said.
That's what he said.
He said you should break up with her.
Yeah, you do realize when you upload this, it's probably going to be one of the most controversial videos you ever made.
I'm not putting it on my main channel. I was asking you what your side of the Grayson thing was.
Oh, okay. I don't think I have a side. I think I recognize what I did was and I'm getting the help.
Man, what do you plan on doing in response to all this? If they do come out with more, are you gonna defend yourself or what?
Here's the thing, though. If I even breathe on Twitter, I will get crucified. So it's hard for me to like defend myself when you're, because if I say anything, no one's gonna believe me, and it's gonna be hard to do that. Unless you release your video, then I make a response right after.
I get the private quote retweets, you just get the dislikes.
So one, you did get help, and two, I was talking about you because you're in a relationship with a 15-year-old, but...
Oh no, it's not sexual at all. In my response to the doc, I literally said, I'm getting help, and I already knew it was and I apologized to the victim. But nobody read that part, and they didn't read that, they just read the part, okay, he was in a relationship with a 13-year-old? Alright, that's it, that's all I need to see.
Alright, well, I think I'm gonna get off here, bro. I think I got, everything. But, yeah.
Alright, I'll begin making the thumbnail right now.
Hey, man, feel free to message me anytime, bro.
Of course.
Take it easy.
Yeah. You too.
The next major development in the story would come only 3 days later, when on the 22nd of October, Eliax and Ramains would break up, not because of any moral qualms of the age, but because she cheated on him. Following this, Eliax would post a statement to Twitter, confirming that she had been in a relationship with Ramains. She would also post pornographic drawings of herself and Ramains that she claimed Ramains asked her to draw, meaning that again, Ramains had lied. On the 26th of October, Mr. Nobody himself was exposed for grooming a minor, as he, a man in his 20s, had been asking a 15-year-old girl for several sexual pictures and being an overall freak. Whilst this was more of a sideshow to the Ramains situation, one important piece of information that was revealed was that Mr. Nobody kept in contact with Ramains because he had a crush on him, so essentially we got this pedo love triangle going on. It would be around a month until the next important progression happened in the situation, which was when Ramains came back for what would be his final public response, made on the 20th of November 2021. Inside his response, he begins by saying much of the same about his relationship with Grayson, stating that he cut Grayson off and went to therapy. Keep in mind Ramains has previously mentioned therapy and will mention it again, yet he is still to provide any specific details or dates on when this therapy began. I'm calling bullshit on this. Then he talks about the document's release and his thoughts on the day it dropped, and how he had affected everyone. Again, as seen from his call with commentator A and his history of lies, this is also very much in question. The following paragraph is Ramains talking about his relationship with Eliax, saying that he viewed the age gap neutrally. He also mentions that he was considering ending his own life at this point, and admits that he did ask for Eliax to draw porn of them, although he says he never used it for pleasure, and it was just a very bad joke.
Oh, no. You see, the child porn, it was just a goof. It was just for laughs, you know? Why aren't you laughing?
Ramains then apologizes to Plate again, and states that he'd actually gone to his parents and shown them the messages. He'd also apparently talked to his uncle, who worked for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who said that he probably wouldn't be arrested. Ramains also claims that he tried to turn himself in, but to no avail, and that the most he would get is community service. Again, some big claims here from this serial manipulator and liar, so take this with a pinch of salt. In his penultimate paragraph, Ramains admitted that he'd actually gotten back in a relationship with Grayson, the 13-year-old, saying that his mother told him she had dated older guys when she was Grayson's age, so he got back in a relationship with Grayson. Ramains claims that he wasn't sexual in this relationship and was trying to be a good partner of sorts, but would soon break it off. At this point, any holdouts of Ramains at least being a good person would vanish, as it was clear this man clearly had a problem, and he was definitely a pedophile. Ramains would end his tweet longer apologising to the victims and promising change to everyone, but by now he had lost all charitability from the public. For most people, this is where the Ramains situation ended. His final response was rightfully memed by the public, most of which were his former friends. His reputation was completely in the dirt, and everyone would try to move on, but even in his last stand, he was still lying to the public. On the 21st of December 2021, the third and final victim of Ramains would speak out, a 14-year-old girl by the name of Funks. She would show evidence that Ramains, who is still 18 at this time, had been in a relationship with her during early November 2021. One of the only screenshots provided would be a Discord DM on the 3rd of November, where she sent him her thighs. And if you look at the timeline, this is before he made his final tweet longer, so even whilst that was being written, he was just completely lying. Silence would fall again for what most assumed to be the final time, but again this was not the case. On the 13th of January 2022, Ramains would reach out to Paradise again, this time to informing that he was getting better with his mental health. Inside this conversation, he talks about how, according to him, he had been focusing on his life, getting extra therapy, and dating someone in real life who was the same age as him. But considering that at this point it's only been a month since he had last talked to a minor, I'm very doubtful that this guy went from lonely and antisocial to dating someone his own age already. Ramains also notes that Eliax has asked him out again about half a month ago, and again sends his apologies to those he harmed, offering to donate $500 to a children's hospital. He would also promise to not come back to YouTube or create any social media accounts, saying that I lied a lot in the past, but I can say that I am being truthful. In further conversation, Paradise presses him on his usage of the internet and asks whether the person Ramains is supposedly dating knows of his past, to which he answers no, because he doesn't want to scare them. He follows that up by saying that this girl was the main reason he dumped Fongs, because he wanted to start dating people his own age, and as Paradise correctly points out, Ramains is again using this supposed girlfriend as a stepping stone rather than seeing love in her. If you remember, Ramains once thought Grayson, a 13-year-old, was the one love for him, and yet in his own statement here, this partner is referred to as more of a point for his reputation. Either she doesn't exist or this relationship isn't exactly fair. Whilst Ramains' online life was being torn apart limb by limb, the experience that Grayson had made them grow closer to LMM Skits, who had then made a rebrand to Satanic Antifa or Lucy. Normally this all shouldn't have been an issue, but sadly this would again get much worse. On the 22nd of February 2022, a commentary creator by the name of Pieman, who you may have heard of before, published a document. Inside they exposed that LMM Skits, who was 17, had been grooming and talking sexually to Grayson, who was at this time 14 years old. Skits also had and kinks and was fully prepared to act them out on Grayson by planning to meet them. Skits would also take advantage of his boyfriend's mental age regression and would often initiate erotic roleplay whilst they were in that state. Skits also admitted to Pieman that they would a 12-year-old if guaranteed they would not get caught, and that they were attracted to children as young as 7. There's one more detail to this story, but it's actually too repulsive and disgusting and horrible that I'm not even going to talk about it, and I would discourage any of you to try and go looking. Now, I'd love to tell you that this person is now in jail, either rotting or swinging in a cell, but unfortunately I can't. Due to incredible negligence by Pieman, Skits would make a statement and go inactive, with barely any possibility of legal action or even a competent report. It's a disgusting situation that is its own rabbit hole, and bigger creators than me have covered it in more depth. But I would rather not. The exposure of LMM Skits and the first involvement of bigger commentary YouTubers would end what was arguably the darkest period inside the small commentary community. From August to January, 3 people that a lot of others were friends with turned out to be deplorable, disgusting people. Mr. Nobody was seen by most as just a meme, but for his age and his DMs to be leaked was shocking. And then LMM Skits, another person who was far more divisive in the community, but someone who had close connections to who they hung out with. Again, turning out to be one of the darkest degenerates I've seen online. And at the centre of all this chaos and community crumbling, there was Ramains. It really is a testament to how many people were close to this guy when he was around, because as soon as people realised this man was a full-blown, persistent pedophile and manipulator, everything started collapsing and everyone's secrets were revealed. As a result of this chaotic series of controversies, many of the smaller YouTubers in the community, aspiring to be famous, stopped making videos, as most of these teens could barely stomach that people they had known for months were in reality disgusting creatures.
It's kind of weird because at the time, I was just kind of completely burnt out from making videos and then that happened, and then it just made me hate the commentary community. Yeah. Legitimately, that entire situation made me hate the commentary community because it was just what community did I embed myself into where my friends would become such pieces of shit?
As for Ramains, his last online activity was poetically an attempt to return to where it all began, as he tried to rejoin the Epic Rap Battles community by appealing his blacklisting. Of course, without mentioning the grooming controversy he had been involved in. Again, another lie to leave it off there, and since then, we've heard nothing.
If there was anything, last thing you'd like to say to anyone watching this video, like a piece of advice so they don't get into, not, they don't end up grooming a kid, but they might end up not, finding the signs of a friend that did up like that. Do you have any advice for that?
I'd say, I wouldn't say it's impossible to tell the signs, but when you're friends that close to someone, you kind of get your mind gets blurred on sort of signs of that. I'd say if you're in a similar situation to what I am, don't blame yourself afterward, because I think in my mind that's what happened to me, is that I blame myself oh, I didn't see the signs. And afterward there was a ton of people, because we had the Bite Type podcast, and there was tweets of me announcing it. And people were saying oh, I hope Ramains is on the next one. And I think those are obviously jokes, and I don't hold any grudges to those people who made those jokes. But when that happened, I was like, okay, this sucks. Why did I have this person? Why couldn't I see the signs? Yeah. So my advice to anyone, if you're in that situation, don't blame yourself. It's not your fault. Most of the time, I guess there's some specific circumstances where there's obvious signs, but in this case, wasn't really too much, in my opinion. That can there's obviously some weird with the furry the Sin situation, but nothing to signal that it'll go as far as like the initial allegations. So yeah, that's basically my advice to people, is like, it's not your fault, don't blame yourself, and just try talking to people, try, you know, getting better if it ever f***ed you up that badly.
The tale of Ramains is one that I never really expected to have any deeper meaning to it. I mean, for sake, I remember being friends with Ramains, and although I was never really super close to him, I remember seeing the situation, and I even memed it myself at the time. But now, looking back almost 3 years later, it's just a very depressing story. Ramains never really had much talent or the potential to become a great YouTuber, although he could have worked for it and he did have a vision. It's more just how much he hurt people around him. People like his friends in Purgatory, some of which were as young as the kids he preyed on. It's awful to think about.
And to look back and see a genuine paedophile in the making, from this weird obsessive kid to stalking girls he liked, and then leeching off these kids for emotional and often validation, it makes you feel disgusted if you've ever interacted with him. In a way, it's almost ironic that Ramains' most popular project was on Tarhead, who, just like him, switched communities and became a central figure in his new fan group, before destroying his new social circle through his degeneracy.
But at the end of the day, one thing to keep in mind is that none of these people mentioned in this video were significant players in the community, or represented the community in any major way. These were small commentators and fans of more popular creators, and nowhere is that more evident than Ramains and his latent obsession with Ramska. But it's cases like these that answer the question of why a commentary community has been dead for years, because if you were one of the biggest YouTubers in this space, would you be happy that these are the people you're directly inspiring? Would you feel proud of what your work has created? Or would you want to get away from it and distance yourself from such a tarnished space? Until next time, stay safe and stay toasty.